You're watching Gearz, brought to you by LMC Truck. Restore, maintain, customize.
Hey, welcome to Gearz. We have a great show coming at you today because it's time to bring the Knucklebuster back from the paint shop and do the final assembly on it. But before we show you the truck all decked out in its new color, we got to walk you back through the project so everybody's up to speed on what it is. As the new car market gets more expensive and uncertain every day, more and more people are picking up 80s and 90s vehicles for cheap and trying to upgrade them and bring them back to life so they can drive them. The Knucklebuster project is an example of how easily that can be done. Now, this particular truck is a '73 Chevy, and it's owned by a young family named the Burtons. And the last time it was worked on was the late '80s, making it kind of a time capsule of that era. So, the goal here is to bring it up to date without breaking the bank. So, starting at the bottom, the suspension was completely rebuilt with new parts. And a 3/4 drop was put on to get the stance lower to the ground. Also, 4-wheel disc brakes were put on to help pull this thing to a stop. And a modern wheel and tire combination finished out the look and the raked hot rod stance. The next stop was the drivetrain, and the truck was quickly violated as we gutted it of its tired engine and transmission. Pull it back. Okay, take it up. Okay, pull it back. Then a new GM crate engine and B&M transmission were detailed and slid between the frame rails. That's awesome, man. Finally, we're going in. A locker was tucked into the rear end to help get the power to the pavement. That will give us a great looking rear end. With the mechanicals done, it was time to dig into the comfort zone of the Knucklebuster, and that means the interior. Now, as before, it was completely gutted and redone using just the right amount of stock and custom parts to keep the cost down, but the cool factor very high. Here we go. Slide it in. After that, we hooked up with Malcolm and the boys at West Kentucky Collision Center, where they smoothed out the flanks and laid on some new color.
But I do enjoy the show, and it's been, I appreciate you giving us the opportunity. It's been really fun, cool, exciting to be a part of this.
Now, just in case you're thinking that this is just a boring old flat black, oh no, think again. This is a PPG finish called eggshell, and the flattening look comes from the clear that you shoot over the color. So you can get this effect out of any color that you want to shoot on your vehicle. Now, the cool thing about this eggshell stuff is that you can shoot it as a straight flat like this, or you can mix it as a satin or a semi-gloss, so you can get exactly the primer or suede look that you want out of your vehicle. This would be a great color on anything from a nostalgic hot rod to a late model car truck. Now, the final touch was some airbrushing by Steve Ray of Airbrush Inc., and it features a beat-up hand with some bloody knuckles to remind you what it takes to build something like this. Hey, welcome back to Gearz and the final assembly of the Knucklebuster project. Today, we are putting the final touches on this project so we can get it back to the Burton family and they can start enjoying it. First thing we need to do is put a face on it. Now, if you'll remember, the truck had a tubular style grille on it from the 80s. And while that was a step in the right direction, a lot has changed with grills since then, both in the way they look and in the way they fit. Now, what we've got here is a billet aluminum grill from LMC Truck, and if you'll notice, everything is powder-coated black on it, except for the leading edge of the bars, which of course is polished. Now, what this does is make these bars look very long and thin, and it also makes them look like they're floating in that grill opening all by themselves. It's a great look, and this is going to be really cool on a black truck. Since the grille sits in front of the stock hood latch, an extension rod needs to be added to relocate the lever. Then the grille just bolts in place using the supplied hardware. All right, the next thing to go on is headlights and bumpers. So we went back to LMC Trucks, picked up some of these Euro-style headlights because they not only throw more light further down the road, they also look really cool. Now, to go with these, we also got these clear turn signal lenses and the amber bulbs to keep them legal, and then we got some new chrome headlight bezels. Then, to finish everything off, we got some new bumpers. Check these out. Now, notice these are a lot smaller and less cumbersome than the original bumpers, and they have driving lights built right into them. These are going to be great on that truck. All of these new front end pieces just bolt right in place of the stock parts. And when you've got them all on, you can see how well they all work together to really clean up the front end of these old Chevys. We also got a new rear bumper. Now, as you can see, it matches the style of that front bumper perfectly, except of course there's no driving lights. Now, hopefully, this thing's gonna bolt right in place. Wrong. Since the rear frame had been buggered up some to hold the old bumper, we needed to fix that first. Also, since the original rear bumper brackets disappeared back with Jimmy Hoffa, we got some of those new from LMC Truck too. And that's it for the bumpers and trim. Now, while we're back here, what about this bed? I mean, it looks fine the way it is, but it sure would be great to have some wood back here, don't you think? Yeah. But how is that possible? I mean, we got a metal floor here. That is what we're going to show you next. Come on. This is a system that comes from Bruce Horkey's Wood and Parts, and this is called the Show Deck. And the whole idea behind the show deck is to allow you to mount a wood bed over the top of your stock original bed. Now, the show deck, as you can see, comes with top quality oak planks that are already pre-cut and sanded notch to fit your bed perfectly. And of course, they come with the stainless steel strips to really finish them off. Now, at this point, it looks like a typical wood bed, right? What makes the show deck different is all of this hardware that allows you to mount this right over the top of your stock bed and then still be able to remove it in just a few minutes. Now, of course, you got to have a good finish on the wood, so the kit also comes with top quality varnish, brushes, hardware, everything that you're going to need to do that. Now, I know some of you guys are looking at this, you're kind of skeptical. Well, I tell you what, we're going to put this all together and you are going to be surprised how well this looks. You know, one of the greatest moments that happens with any project is when you do the final assembly on it and you put it together for the last time. Because that means the project is almost done and it's almost time for you to get out and start enjoying it. And that is where we are with the Knucklebuster project. Right now, we are putting in a show deck from Bruce Horkey's into what would be an otherwise very boring bed. Now, as you can see, I've got the two subframes assembled, got them all squared up, got boards in place, got the strips on. Now it's just a matter of putting them into bed and seeing what we got. With the main pieces in place, it's just a matter of installing the outer boards around the wheel wells. Once again, squaring them up and clamping them in place with the skid strips. Remember, since all beds are just a little bit different, don't be surprised if you have to massage the boards a little bit to get them to fit perfectly. The final piece to go on is the polished rear sill plate that adds a nice finishing touch to the bed. Yeah, what a difference that makes. Now, if you'll notice, the show deck only sits about 1.5 inches above the stock metal bed. Once you get that tailgate on there, you're not even gonna notice that. The best part about this show deck, though, is it comes out in about 5 minutes. All you gotta do is pull out one of the center strips and take out the two sections. You don't even have to disassemble them. That way, if you need to carry a big old greasy engine in here, you just pop out the wood, throw in the engine, and that way you don't mess up your wood. The last thing we're gonna deal with is the exhaust system. And for that, we went to MagnaFlow and got one of their full stainless steel dual exhaust systems to really bring that thing alive. Now check this out. All the stainless steel tubing is pre-bent, so it's gonna fit right where it needs to go. All your hangers are welded in place, and the ends are flared. So basically, they just slip together, and when you put a clamp on that, that's not gonna leak. Then, of course, we have two polished stainless steel mufflers to give us the sound and the flow that we're after, and then we finish it off with all the clamps and all the hardware to actually be able to mount this thing on the truck. So, let's get to it. The first thing to do is get rid of the old exhaust system and penetrating lube, deep well sockets, and a Sawzall do wonders on rusty brackets and old nasty pipe. Once the old junk's out of the way, the MagnaFlow system just lays in place and fits like it should. And that drives home the importance of buying a quality exhaust system that is designed to fit your particular vehicle. Because the last thing that you want to do is spend the afternoon laying under your vehicle trying to make something fit that doesn't. And that finishes off the Knucklebuster project. And as you can see, it's a lot different than what we started out with. What we have here is basically a brand new 1973 Chevy pickup. And by choosing your parts wisely and doing the work yourself, this is something that just about anybody can do for a heck of a lot less money than it would take you to go down and buy yourself a brand new truck. And if that's not motivation, I don't know what is. Now, we do have one last thing to do. We have to give it back to the Burtons after we take it out and break it in properly.
And now, Parts Bin.
When you are custom building a vehicle, sometimes you need to put fenders on it. Now, you can grab yourself a piece of sheet metal, head over to all your expensive metalworking tools, and build you a fender, provided you've got the tools and the ability to use them. Now, another option is to give Russ Warnemont Designs a call and pick up some fender blanks for your application. Now, a fender blank is exactly what it sounds like. They're blank fenders, and Russ will build these things to whatever width and whatever radius you might be working on. Now look at this. You can get little thin fenders all the way up to big fat 10-inch wide guys. Now these are made out of heavy 14-gauge steel, so they're not going to flex and move on you. And as you can see, they have a really cool radius. These are really nice looking fenders. Then you've got all kinds of extra material here, so you literally can cut this away into whatever shape you want it to be. Using a fender blank will save you an incredible amount of time and money. That's why most professional car and bike builders will start with one of Russ's fenders when they're custom making fenders. So, if you've got something and it needs some fenders on it, Russ Warnemont Design has got the sheet metal for you. You know, one of the most important tools that you can put on an off-road vehicle is a winch, because it'll pull you out of places and literally help you get back home. But what if you got a great big truck like this? Well, you need a great big winch, and nobody knows winches like Warn. For example, this is their heavyweight series 15,000-pound electric winch. Now this thing is not only incredibly strong, but it's also small enough to fit on the front of most trucks, and it's powerful enough to pull even the biggest rig out of the deepest mud hole. Now, of course, it comes with the fair lead and the remote and all the hardware to put it on. But how do you mount something like this? Well, Warn also has a whole line of receivers and mounting brackets, so you can literally bolt this thing on the front of your truck. You can even get a universal one like this if you're building something crazy like Sergeant Rock. So, if you are ready to get serious about a winch that will help get you home when everybody else is cussing because they're stuck, Warn is the only four-letter word that you need to know. There's no doubt that the 2.5-ton Rockwell military axle is one of the baddest axles on the planet, especially if you're running really big tires. Man, it's almost mandatory. The problem is the Rockwell's had some limitations over the years when it comes to traction. You either had the open differential or a locker. Well, ARB decided it was time to give you a third choice and came out with an air locker for the Rockwell axle. Now check this thing out. You've got a complete carrier assembly. You got the locker built right in, side gears, spider gears, it's all there. Then, of course, you have the air lines and the hardware and the switches to actually hook this thing up. Now, of course, you need air to go with an air locker, so ARB has got a great compressor system to actually make this thing operate. So when you're out four-wheeling and you need the ultimate in traction, you just flip the switch, it locks both tires together, and you are going places. Then when you're ready to drive on the street, flip the switch again, it opens the differential, and you can actually steer the rig. So, if you are putting 2.5-ton Rockwells in your off-road rig, the best way to lock them up is with an ARB air locker.
And now, what are you working on? Brought to you by Phoenix Systems Brake Tools. Record-breaking performance that you can feel.
Today's What Are You Working On comes from Mike Majewitz from Utica, New York. And Mike got into his project a little differently than most people. He bought it off of a used car lot. Now, the story goes he was already looking for a truck, and he stumbled across this 2002 Ford F-150 4x4 that only had 75,000 miles on it. The problem was it had been rolled over into a snowbank. Here's a shot of some of the damage done to it. But that didn't bother Mike. He'd been watching the shows, wanted to dig into something like this, so he bought the truck and assembled a crack team of restoration specialists. Here they are. And they tore into this truck. Man, he started tearing it apart. He said they tore off the hood, the fenders, the grille, stripped out the interior. Here's a shot of some of the work being done. And then they started buying new parts. But they didn't just buy new parts, they also went to junkyards to get doors. They experienced all that as a great thing. Now, they found out that because the truck had been rolled, that it had tweaked the cab a little bit. So they had to take it to a frame shop, and according to Mike, they pulled, pounded, jacked, and hammered that thing back into shape. Now you can see by this final shot, they did a really good job putting this thing together. The truck looks awesome. Now Mike says that he's already tested this truck out because he had to pull his wife's Explorer out of a snowbank. Man, you guys must have some serious snowbanks in Utica, New York. Now, Mike says it's been a great experience. He'd do it again if he had to, and he says if he can do it, anybody can do it. Mike, we couldn't have said it any better ourselves. That is what this show was all about. So to help you upkeep that vehicle, we are going to give you one of these brake bleeder systems and some brake tools from Phoenix Systems so you can keep those brakes in top working shape. So you, my friend, do not end up in a snowbank. Now, the rest of you guys, if you want your vehicle featured on the show, send some stuff in to GearzTV.com and we'll see if we can get it on the air. All right, that takes care of it for today. It is time for you to get out there and start working on something. It's time for me to go smoke the tires on the Knucklebuster. We'll see you next week.